that train, babe.
My name is Ben Boothe, and this is Big Sky Voices.
And I'm Victor Waumett at Storyteller Films, and today our guest is
Jon Hendry, Jon Hendry, and Jon Hendry with IATSE, and this is local number 480,
right.
The famous 480. Once when I first came to New Mexico, I asked someone who was the mover and shaker in town. They said, well, the one guy who could be mayor of this town at the flip of a coin would be Jon Hendry. And so I always wanted to meet you after that. And so you guys are known to be doers and not speakers.
I hope so.
Give us a brief overview of what the letters for your union stand for.
It's IATSE is the International Alliance of Theatrical and Stage Employees.
Okay, thank you. How long has the union been a big force in New Mexico film? This is Jon.
Well, we would like to think we've always been a force in New Mexico film. We started 30 years ago next year on Milagro Beanfield War.
Okay.
And we've been here ever since. Now, the stage union here has been here for 105 years. So our sister union, where we started, 423 out of Albuquerque, has been here for 105 years, one of the oldest locals in the country.
Really? Okay. So, give us a brief overview. I know you were instrumental in the New Mexico tax incentive program that has brought a lot of movie business here. Give us a quick, brief history and overview of that, if you would.
Well, interesting. We started film in New Mexico. The first film office in the United States was right here. Dave Cargo, a Republican, and then under Gary Johnson, at the time a Republican, now a Libertarian, we passed a film finance bill and a film incentive bill with 15% rebates, working with the Republicans across the aisle. Then Bill Richardson expanded that to 25%, and then Susana Martinez expanded it to 30% for TV and movies under certain criteria, but she put a cap on it. Not a cap on the incentives as far as we're concerned, a cap on the hopes and dreams of young New Mexicans. So, but that's the. But New Mexico was the innovator, first state to do the loan program, first state to do the rebate incentives. We're mimicking Canada, trying to keep the pictures here. So we've been doing it for a while.
So everybody's pretty happy with the film incentive here, as far as I can tell, except for arguments about how big it should be,
right.
et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly. I don't think anybody's arguing over the percentage or anything else, or that it works, but the cap is problematic.
Did I see that they had proposed a cap of what, 70 or 80 million?
Originally it was going to be 60. One legislator from up north got it cut to 50 on the basis we'll go back and revisit it. Well, we haven't revisited for 7 years, and obviously that makes it tighter and tighter every year with inflation and everything else.
So the first people to apply for $50 million for the tax incentives get the money, and if you come in after that,
it goes on to next year. You're the first people next year.
Okay, got
But
it.
it seems to be a drop in the bucket. What I read the other day from the film office that we'd seen about $390 million in direct expenditures.
It's 512 this year.
512, so it's more than they quote. So
it's about a 10%. 512. So it's not a drop. I mean, $50 million is a lot of money, but remember you can't have single entry bookkeeping. It's not just what goes there. These picture companies are required to pay tax in order to get a tax credit, and tax rates running about 8%. That means if they spend $516 million, they paid $40 million in taxes, $40 million plus in taxes to get that $50 million. And of course, there's a big difference between direct spend and economic impact, which is about $1.5 billion. So figuring $1.5 billion at 8%, we brought in just in taxes $120 million in taxes for $50 million for the tax credit. So it all depends how you look at it. But $50 million in a state with a $6 billion budget, that's 0.8% of the entire state budget. I mean, it's not small.
So it's one of the biggest contributors to the economy. I guess you have oil, gas, defense,
hospitality, and then probably film.
And so, but film is pretty high up on the list there.
I always hate to look at where, because we contribute across the board. We contribute around the state. We're not just centered here in the zone in Albuquerque and Santa Fe. I don't think you can just look at dollar figures and talk about it. Our jobs pay twice as much as the average wage here in New Mexico.
How many jobs do you think are actually?
Well, here's what's interesting. We actually know this for 2014. Now, the color is in 15 and 16. We had 2 record years, and obviously we're not finished 17 yet, but it's a pretty good year so
right.
far. But in 15 and 16, it would be much higher than this. But back then, they brought a Canadian firm in, and being Canadians, they couldn't just throw in a couple of people to round it up. So it's 14,998 jobs. And they actually went through the unemployment records and everything else and the codes, and they spent a lot of time and a lot of money, and said there's 14,998 jobs directly in the film business, and then 6,500 or so induced jobs, which are jobs that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the film business.
Well, I'm not Canadian, so I'm going to round up to 15,000 if that's okay. But so you think it's grown substantially
Since
that time?
Yeah, but we haven't gone back and counted. It costs a lot of money to count these
Okay,
things.
okay.
What are you seeing, Jon Hendry? Is the trend now for fewer and bigger films, or
No,
for more and more
opposite.
independent films that are
No,
smaller?
and not independent films either. Our films are now driven by large corporations, Amazon, Netflix, Google. We're looking at one for Verizon. Facebook is doing original content now. So these large corporations, which are hardly independents, are the ones that are really driving our business here. If you look at what we just shot, we just wrapped Bus of Scruggs. That was for Netflix. Godless was for Netflix last year. $100 million. Ridiculous Six, Longmire. We got a lot of these new media, as they call them. Although the internet's been around since Al Gore invented it, so it's not it's not brand new. But we call it new media because it's a different way of doing it, and that's the real trend in the business of these new platforms for delivery.
Right.
Why does television get a 30% tax incentive and film gets 25%?
Because
for the most
they're
part?
long-term jobs.
You like the recurring episodes and the long.
Exactly.
Okay. Well,
And we wrote the law, so we got to pick.
you had a hand in writing the law, didn't you, or did you actually just write it?
The original one, all the original stuff back then, it was me and this person or me and that person, but there wasn't a whole bunch of us around the film business.
Yeah.
There wasn't, there's 15,000 people now. There wasn't even 150 of us back then when we started this. It was probably 60 or 70 people making their full-time living, and sometimes that was scant. If no movie came in, then it was a bad year. There wasn't very many of us back then, so. But I was around for the loan program, the incentive program, the 15%, the 20%, the 25%, the Breaking Bad bill, the Breaking Bad redo. A lot of that stuff is mine. The early stuff is all mine, and the newer stuff is a great collaboration between people on both sides of the aisle, in and out of government.
Do you see any firm trends towards building substantial post-production facilities here?
I don't, and honestly, it's not a big thing for us. The problem with post-production is, and we found this when Sony came in here, was that one person can generate a $1 or $2 or $3 million rebate with a $50 million cap until we fix how that works. But you know, when you're paying out a rebate of say $1 million for 10 jobs, that's not worth it. You know, I'd rather do physical production. I'm not against the post stuff. I mean, I'd love to see a post thing, but as long as you've got a cap, how are you going to fix the post in there? I mean, how's that going to go? All that's going to do is cut the amount of money available for physical production, you know, which means there's less things to post.
Do we have enough training here for new people coming into the business to support the growing?
One of the best things in New Mexico is that all the different training programs we have, between us, the State Film Office, the great community college. I mean, we are the leaders. One of John Grace, who worked at the charter school down in Albuquerque, Data is now in Georgia. Barton Bonds, who was one of the original from Santa Fe Community College. Our people are training all over the country, and we've got great training programs.
What's our competition now? Is it Louisiana? Is it Georgia? Is it California?
We have no competition. Our competition is the cap. That's all it is. It doesn't matter. If the cap is $70 million, we would shoot to the cap. If the cap is $100 million, we would shoot to the cap. If the cap is unlimited, we would shoot unlimited. If they're going to make certain genres of movies here, for example, we lost Avengers, the TV series, because they needed cityscapes, and you know we didn't have them here. So you know, you lose pictures for that. But this is a logical place to shoot westerns, to shoot science fiction. There's a lot of the period pieces. I was just up in Wagamern yesterday with a movie shooting in the 30s, and it wasn't hard to make Wagamern look like
it's like the 30s.
Yeah. Our competition is the cap. Nobody else is our competition.
What do you see for the future of the film business here?
we need to deal with the cap. I mean, we're a zombie business. We're dead, but we're still walking. We're dead, but we don't know it. I mean, we're literally the walking dead of it, because until we deal with this cap's been the same. And the promise was made that they would go back and revisit the cap, and they haven't. So $50 million, Dan, is maybe worth $42 million right now. How we set it up with the money rolling over is pretty brilliant. It's a good way that we're doing it. We just always said we'd put more money into it, and we haven't.
We haven't, yes.
Well, and you know, I just want to be really fair here. A lot of that's got to do with the fact that the state of New Mexico is completely broke. We're the last state. We have not recovered from the Great Depression. Austin, Texas was the first city. Texas was the first state. We still have high unemployment. We have no money. We took capital money and balanced the budget this year. We haven't raised state employees' salaries in 7 years, teachers in 7 years. We're not fixing our roads. We're not doing any of this sort of stuff. And there's more to be fixed than just the film business. And just fixing the film business won't fix the big problems. And just fixing the big problems won't necessarily fix the film business. It has to be done in concert.
Do you see in your business the other political things coming out of Washington or other places that you think may have an effect on the film industry?
Well, I mean, we don't know where Trump's going with his trade policy. We would like to see really. I mean, this is a guy who gets his suits and his jackets and his ties and everything else he sells. He talks about made in America, but he makes them in China. We need to have strong copyright protection in any of these new trade deals they're talking about, and I don't see it. There was $1 billion studio, it looks like America, built on the outskirts of Beijing in China. We're bringing in these $1 billion funds, Google, Amazon, Relativity, Lionsgate, bringing in billions of dollars of Chinese money to here. I mean, they just want to learn how to shoot pictures, and then they'll go shoot them in China, where you can get a technician, non-union there, for the equivalent of $12, $15 an hour. And you're going to have a hard time finding a crew here who work for $12 or $15 an hour.
I've noticed in a lot of the big movies lately, every one of the big ones has a Chinese investor or a Chinese co-producer and everything.
Absolutely.
And even the Tom Cruise movies, I notice a lot of Chinese investment going into the movies.
That's where the money is. And if it's a Chinese investor, then they can show in China. They limit the number of American films that can be shown there, unless it's got a Chinese company involved. And I'm not huge in protectionism, but we have to protect our copyright. There is no business model that says that somebody can put your product up there. You can work really hard, make a movie, and it shows up on the internet 3 weeks before it came out. That's what happened with Wolverine. Or there's no business model that says that it's okay for people to sell your product and not give you any money for it. And there's people making money out there, not just the pirate sites, there's official sites out there, not keen on the Netflix model for how much producers are getting. This is all going to affect us in the long run.
Jon Hendry, the movie industry is one of the industries that's friendly to unions. Sure. And the unions have been friendly to the movie industry. Absolutely. From the very beginning. Yeah. I want to tell you, this state here is glad that you're here.
Oh, thanks.
And the things that you and your groups do, because you're not just one group, you're several here. I think you're a resource for the state of New Mexico, and so good for the economy and the movie industry.
Oh, I appreciate that. But I would say that if every state office worked as closely as we do with the New Mexico Film Office or the other governments here, instead of fighting us, so many of our issues in New Mexico are these huge issues that people look at it and say we can't solve them. Well, that's what they said in South Africa in 1993 when they were ending apartheid, or Northern Ireland in the early part of this century. And that's what they're saying about Israel and Palestine. All problems can be solved, I think, when people sit down and talk rationally. And they won't do it. Outside of the film office, there's very few people in state government right now who work with us. And one of the reasons why I think we were the leading economy in the country, fastest growth, lowest unemployment under Bill Richardson. We're the slowest growth and the highest unemployment under Susana Martinez. And it's not that she doesn't want to do things right, it's just she's trying to do things herself. And you've got to involve more people in these processes, and we've got to come up with New Mexico solutions. And the great thing about New Mexico Film, it was a New Mexico solution to a Canadian problem. Canada took our TV series, we responded, and it's been a great. Now, why can't we do that with energy, oil and gas? There's so many different things that we could look at doing. Just easy things. Put a 10-cent a gallon gas tax on and buy every minimum insurance, so everybody's insured in this state. How cool would that be? How about single payer for the state when our governor says that she doesn't support doing away with Obamacare? How about we come up with a single payer process for the state, and everybody in the state's covered with health insurance. How many people would want to move here if they had that opportunity to do that? You know, the labs are sitting out there bringing people in from California to work on a Monday morning and shipping them back on a Friday night because they can't get qualified people out there who can do the job, pass the drug test, and everything else. I mean, there's so many things that we could work together on in getting people working, but we don't. We want to fight more than we want to work.
Well, the film business is known for being a collaborative business.
Exactly.
It would be really nice if all the functions of government could work together in the way that the film business does.
100% nailed it. And we cannot make the movie. There's not one person on the set, believe me, I know producers, everyone is cheap. There would not one person on the set that's on there who is not necessary. And you can't make it. You can't lose anybody. You can't lose that third grip or that second craft service person or the guy that empties the honey wagon or whatever without somebody sitting down and say they have to be here. And everybody has to work together. Show up at the same time, work together, finish it. That's how you make your days. We should be a model for so many different things here.
Well, this program is called Big Sky Voices, and the reason for it is we feel like that your voice is a big voice for New Mexico.
Wow.
And it's an important voice, and we wanted to give you this exposure. You will see this. It'll go out on the internet. Our hits have hit as high as 800,000, but most of the time they're about 5,000 per day. And I want to thank you for allowing us your time.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate it.
This is Victor Waumett for Big Sky Voices, thanking Jon Hendry for his time today and his education of us.
And Ben Boothe, adios.
And if I don't make it, you know my baby will.